You're Never Weird on the Internet Almost, by Felicia Day. Introduction. There's a great story about a meeting that took place in a polished boardroom at a major Hollywood talent agency. Inside, about a dozen men in very fine suits are scratching their heads, completely stumped. They're listening to a young filmmaker named Joss Whedon, the man who would later direct The Avengers, pitch his new idea, an internet musical called Drive. Orable's sing-along blog. With him are his collaborators, and among them is a young, red-haired woman who, by his own account, looks all of 14. The men in suits are confused. How do you put something like this on the internet? Their internet expert suggests chopping it up into 3-minute bits for YouTube, because, he insists, no one watches more than 3 minutes of anything. And that's when the redhead pipes up. She takes over the entire conversation. She talks about bandwidth and view counts, about different platforms and monetization strategies. She speaks with a quiet, fierce authority that leaves the experts speechless. Joss Whedon, watching her, has a realization. He describes it as a Buffy moment. They never saw her coming. That young woman was Felicia Day, and that moment perfectly captures the spirit of her incredible journey. Felicia is an actress, a writer, a producer, and a pioneer who built an entire media empire from her garage, armed with a borrowed camera and an unapologetic love for all things nerdy. Her memoir, You're Never Weird on the Internet Almost, isn't just a collection of funny stories from Hollywood in the early days of the web. It's a powerful guide for anyone who has ever felt like an outsider. It's a testament to the idea that the very things that make you feel strange or different might just be your greatest strengths. By the end of our time together today, you won't just know Felicia's story. You'll understand a profound secret of the modern world: how to take your own unique weirdness, find your tribe, and build something meaningful that is entirely your own. Book summary. Felicia Day's story begins with an admission. She was, in her own words, homeschooled for hippie reasons, not God reasons. Her childhood was anything but conventional. There were no school buses, no cafeterias, no prom. Instead, there was a diet of carob instead of chocolate, vitamins that made her breath smell strange, and a mom who cut her hair in the shape of a salad bowl. Before being pulled from the system entirely, she had a brief stint in elementary school, just long enough to learn a few fundamental truths about herself. First, that she would never be one of the popular girls, the ones with perfect hair bows that matched their dresses. So instead, she became the leader of the misfits. And second, that adults were remarkably easy to please if you just tried to be perfect. Her formal education came to an abrupt end after what she calls the money-burning incident of 1985. At her conservative Lutheran school, a teacher set fire to a handful of dollar bills in front of the 7-year-old students, calling it the devil's paper. When Felicia reported this back home, her mother, a woman with a fiery sense of justice, was so outraged that she pulled her out of that school, and soon after, out of school altogether. What followed was a decade of unstructured, do-it-yourself education. Her mom ordered a curriculum from a catalog, the kind used by missionary families overseas, but the daily structure lasted about a week. Soon, school became something that happened later, squeezed between grocery shopping and midnight screenings of the Rocky Horror Picture Show. The one and only rule that was strictly enforced was that she had to read. Constantly. Anything and everything she could get her hands on. This isolation forged a deep, and sometimes lonely, inner world. Her best friend was a little pink diary, where she confided her dreams of time travel, made serious vows never to marry for money, and worked through her complex relationship with her brother, Ryan, often ending entries with a simple, heartfelt postscript, P.S. I hate Ryan Day vehemently. With no peers to judge her, her oddball enthusiasms bloomed without shame. She became obsessed with pulp detective novels, dreaming of becoming a glamorous secretary like Perry Mason's loyal companion, Della Street. She developed a passion for mathematics, studying calculus by the age of 12 because her mom had read an uncredited study claiming that girls become really stupid in science after they get their period. The social void was filled with lessons, ballet, tap, watercolor, even a poise class held in the back of a department store. She was, in her words, being trained to become a geisha. This bizarre upbringing had a profound effect. On the one hand, it left her with deep social anxiety and a feeling of being an outsider. But on the other hand, it gave her a priceless gift, the freedom to love what she loved without apology. She was, as she puts it, irrevocably weird. And that weirdness would become the bedrock of her entire career. As a teenager searching for her identity, she turned to the esoteric. She studied handwriting analysis, numerology, and astrology, trying to find a blueprint for who she was supposed to be. For a while, she became the resident psychic for her ballet class, charting the romantic destinies of her classmates until one of the mothers complained she was practicing Satanism. But her true awakening came when she discovered the world of video games. It started with text-only adventure games on a massive, table-sized laptop her grandfather gave them. Then she found a series called Ultima. This game was different. It began with a fortune teller asking you a series of moral questions, and your answers shaped the kind of character you would become. For a lonely girl searching for herself, this was a revelation. The game, she says, saw into my soul. She was hooked, but she desperately needed to share this passion with other people. That's when she discovered the early internet. On a service called Prodigy, she found a message board for a club called the Ultima Dragons. For the first time, she had found her peers. These were people who understood her obsession, who had read the same fantasy novels, who spoke the same language. She adopted the screen name Codex Dragon and dove in head first. This online world became her social life. She flirted with boys through fan fiction and three-way phone calls, developing crushes on Wolf Dragon and Camouflage Dragon from New Jersey. The entire saga culminated in a real-life meetup that ended with her first kiss, a deeply awkward, parent-orchestrated encounter in the back of a car in a Walmart parking lot. The romance didn't last, but the friendships did. That online community taught her a lesson that would define her life. No matter how lonely or isolated you feel, you can always find a place to be accepted online. Your qualification for belonging is simply enthusiasm. Her intense, nerdy focus paid off in other ways. Thanks to her violin skills, honed by a terrifying but brilliant Russian teacher named Victor, she earned a full scholarship to the University of Texas at Austin at the age of 16. But her dream of independence was short-lived. She was too young to live in the dorms, so her mother ended up driving her to college every day for 4 years. College was another exercise in navigating the world as an outsider. She was a child prodigy surrounded by adults, a homeschooler dropped into a campus of 30,000 students. Her first instinct was to hide, to become invisible. But her talent made that impossible. After a stunning orchestra audition, she was placed in the number 2 violin seat, right in front of all the seniors and grad students. The pressure was immense. It all came to a head during a masterclass where, convinced she had failed in front of her peers, she burst into tears and ran out of the room. Ironically, that moment of vulnerability was a breakthrough. It showed everyone she wasn't some untouchable prodigy, but a scared kid, just like them. After that, people were much nicer, and she finally started to make friends. At the same time, she was pursuing a second degree in mathematics, mostly to please her dad and grandfather. Her academic life was defined by a pathological need for perfection. She introduced herself at parties as Felicia Day. I have a 4.0 inches. This obsession came to a head in a notoriously difficult class called group theory. After getting a 23 on her first test, she was devastated. Her professor gave her some wise advice. You know the best thing that could happen? Get a B in this class. Life would be so much easier for you. But she couldn't let it go. She spent the entire summer studying obsessively, eventually acing the final and graduating with her perfect 4.0. Looking back, she realizes her professor was right. Chasing perfection for its own sake was a hollow victory. If she'd been easier on herself, she might have had more friendships and more fun. After graduating, she faced a crossroads. Everyone expected her to pursue a prestigious career in music, but her heart wasn't in it. She wanted to find something she was truly passionate about, a dream she couldn't live without pursuing. So she packed her bags, took the money she'd saved, and moved to Los Angeles to become an actor. Hollywood was not the meritocracy she had imagined. She arrived with a naive belief that her talent and hard work would be enough. Her first acting job was for a sleazy horror film where the director tried to convince her to do a nude scene. She refused, got a smaller part, and then the check for her work, all $90 of it, bounced. She was so proud of that bounced check, a perfect symbol of her inauspicious start, that she had it ornately framed. The next few years were a frustrating grind. She took classes with an emotionally abusive acting coach who told her she wasn't good at comedy and should focus on playing victims. Agents gave her contradictory advice: fix your teeth, lose weight, gain weight, dye your hair. Desperate for work, she started changing herself to fit what Hollywood wanted. She cut her hair, started wearing nerdy glasses, and cultivated a quirky persona. And it worked. She started booking commercials and recurring roles on TV shows, finding her niche as the cat-owning, stalker wife secretary. She was making a good living, but she was miserable. The roles were a shadow of who she truly was. Hollywood had no place for her geeky, weird, video game-loving inner self. She had painted herself into a corner, and she didn't know how to get out. To escape her career disillusionment, she turned back to the one world that had always accepted her: online gaming. In 2005, her brother invited her to play a new game called World of Warcraft. This was more than a hobby. It was a lifeline. Playing the game allowed her to reconnect with her brother and gave her a sense of purpose and success that was missing from her real life. While real-life Felicia was struggling, her gnome warlock character, Keeblerette, was becoming an A-list celebrity in a virtual world. But her obsessive personality took over. Playing a few hours a night turned into an all-consuming addiction. She started raiding with her guild, which required being online for 8 to 10 hours at a time, 6 nights a week. She stopped going to acting classes, skipped auditions, and ignored her real-life friends and boyfriend. She was working a full-time, unpaid job inside World of Warcraft, and it was destroying her life. This period of intense gaming became the inspiration for her greatest creation. The idea for The Guild, a comedy web series about a group of online gamers, was born from her own addiction. But the journey from idea to reality was agonizing. She joined a women's support group, nicknamed Chicken, where she promised every week that she would write her pilot, but she kept getting pulled back into the game. Finally, after months of lying to her friends and herself, she hit a breaking point. One night, she woke up with a full-blown panic attack and a terrifying epiphany. She was going to die someday, and if she didn't do something meaningful right now, her life would add up to nothing. In a desperate 2-week frenzy over the Christmas holiday, fueled by sheer grit and the fear of her own mortality, she finally wrote the script. She poured all of her own insecurities, her social anxiety, and her experiences as a gamer into the main character, Codex. The script was funny, authentic, and deeply personal. But when she took it to Hollywood, the response was universal confusion. Producers didn't understand the world of online gaming. One executive told her to take all the gaming stuff out. It was her friend from the support group, Kim Evie, who suggested a radical idea: Have you thought of doing this project for the internet? At the time, YouTube was brand new, a wild frontier. The idea was terrifying, but it was also empowering. For the first time, Felicia realized she didn't need anyone's permission. She could just make it. With a shoestring budget of $1,500 split between herself, Kim, and director Jane, they set out to film the first few episodes. It was a true do-it-yourself operation. Felicia became obsessed with scavenging for props, trolling alleys and the website free cycle for anything they could use. She pulled favors from everyone she knew, held auditions open to the public, and shot the entire show in her own brightly colored house, which was quickly overrun by cast and crew. When the first episodes were finished, she launched a one-woman marketing blitz. She spent 18 hours straight emailing hundreds of gaming bloggers, personally tailoring each message. Her obsessive spamming worked. The show found an audience. People started watching, commenting, and sharing. Then, one day, YouTube featured the Guild on its front page, and everything exploded. Suddenly, the same Hollywood companies that had rejected her were calling. But every offer came with a catch. They wanted to own the show, to change it, to take away her control. Remembering the misery of being forced into a box, she refused them all. Instead, she put a simple PayPal donation button on their website. To her astonishment, fans donated enough money to fund the next episode, and then the next. She had bypassed the gatekeepers entirely, building a career fan by fan. The success of the Guild, and her role in Joss Whedon's Drive. Orrible's sing-along blog, catapulted her into a new kind of fame. She became a superstar at events like San Diego Comic-Con, a world where she felt completely at home. These conventions, she explains, are a real-life version of the internet at its best, a place where you're never weird because you're surrounded by people who are weird just like you. But success brought its own challenges. She launched her own YouTube channel, Geek and Sundry, and found herself running a multi-million-dollar company. The pressure was crushing. She was working 18-hour days, managing employees, and trying to maintain her acting career. The joy of creating was replaced by the stress of running a business. At the same time, she had to face the reality that the Guild was coming to an end. The show had been her entire identity for 6 years. Without it, she felt lost. This combination of overwork and a crisis of identity led to a severe nervous breakdown. She suffered from nightly panic attacks, crippling depression, and even memory loss. On the outside, she was at the height of her success. On the inside, she was falling apart. It was only when the mental stress began to manifest as serious physical illness that she was finally forced to get help. The experience taught her a hard but vital lesson about the danger of tying your self-worth to your work. Success, she learned, is not a finish line, and you have to know how to take care of yourself. Her final and most profound test came in 2014 with the rise of Gamergate, a toxic online movement that began with the harassment of a female game developer and spiraled into a widespread campaign of misogyny and bullying. For years, Felicia had been a positive advocate for women in gaming, but watching this wave of hatred wash over the community she loved, she was afraid to speak out. She had been the target of smaller-scale attacks before and knew the personal cost. But one day, walking down the street, she saw two guys in gaming t-shirts. In the past, she would have smiled, a silent acknowledgement of their shared passion. But this time, she felt a pang of fear and crossed the street to avoid them. In that moment, she realized the poison had spread too far. She went back to her hotel and wrote a heartfelt blog post about her fear, her love for the gaming community, and why the hostility had to stop. Within an hour of posting it, her personal information, her home address and phone number, was released online. Her fears had come true. But despite the terror and the violation, she knew she had done the right thing. The internet had given her a voice, and she had a responsibility to use it. If she, a prominent woman in the industry, was too afraid to speak, who would? In the end, Felicia's story comes full circle. She sold her company, found a healthier work-life balance, and continues to create things she's passionate about. She shares a wonderful anecdote about visiting Skywalker Ranch and seeing a prop from Star Wars, a piece of the Death Star made from spray-painted Dixie cups. For her, that humble object was the most inspiring thing she'd ever seen. It was proof that you don't need a massive budget or the approval of a studio to create something iconic. All you need is a vision, the courage to pursue it, and a willingness to be as weird as you want to be. Commentary. What I find so powerful about Felicia Day's story is how beautifully it captures the journey of a creative person in the 21st century. It's a story about the courage to be different in a world that often demands conformity. For so many of us, especially when we're young, there's this immense pressure to fit in. We hide the things we love, the weird hobbies and passions, because we're afraid of being judged. Felicia's memoir is a resounding declaration that those unique parts of you are not just okay, they are your superpower. Her entire career was built on the very things she was once isolated for: her love of video games, fantasy novels, and all things geeky. It's a profound reminder that authenticity is the most valuable currency you have. The book also serves as an incredible blueprint for navigating the modern creative landscape. For generations, if you wanted to be an artist, a writer, or a performer, you had to go through the gatekeepers, the studios, the publishers, the record labels. You had to ask for permission. Felicia's story is about what happens when you decide to stop asking. The moment she and her friends decided to make the guild themselves, using their own money and their own homes, they took their destiny into their own hands. The internet provided a direct line to an audience that was hungry for exactly what she was creating. This is a lesson that is more relevant today than ever. The tools to create and distribute your work are at your fingertips. You don't have to wait to be discovered. You can, as she did, build your own stage. But perhaps the most important and resonant theme is the cautionary tale about success and self-worth. It's easy to look at someone like Felicia and see only the achievements, the hit show, the successful company, the millions of fans. But she is brutally honest about the cost of that success, the addiction, the burnout, the crippling anxiety. Her breakdown serves as a vital warning against the trap of letting your work become your entire identity. She reminds us that you have to nurture your own well-being, set boundaries, and learn to say no. Your value as a person is not measured by your view count, your subscriber number, or your professional accomplishments. Finding that balance, between ambition and self-care, between connecting with a community and protecting your own peace, is the ultimate quest. So, what can we take away from this? I think it comes down to a few simple actions. First, take an inventory of your own weirdness. What is the one passion you have that you don't always share? This week, find one small way to embrace it. Join an online forum, read a book about it, or share it with a trusted friend. Second, start your own Dixie Cup project. Think of one small, creative thing you've always wanted to do. Write a short story, film a 1-minute video, draw a comic. Don't worry about it being perfect. Just make it. The act of creating, of bringing something into the world that didn't exist before, is its own reward. We've covered the major moments and lessons from Felicia Day's You're Never Weird on the internet almost today. But I'll be honest with you, a summary can only scratch the surface. The true heart of this book is in Felicia's voice, her humor, her vulnerability, and the incredible warmth that shines through on every page. This overview is meant to give you a map of the territory, to help you decide if this is a journey you want to take. If any of her struggles or triumphs have resonated with you, I wholeheartedly encourage you to pick up a copy. Reading it isn't just about learning, it's about spending time with a friend who makes you feel a little less alone in your own weirdness, and a lot more capable of achieving your dreams. You can find a link to the book in the description below. Also, if you found this summary valuable and want to continue exploring the ideas that shape successful and fulfilling lives, please take a moment to like this video and subscribe to the channel. It lets us know we're on the right track and ensures you won't miss our next deep dive into another life-changing book. Let's keep learning and growing together.